This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC and JZ Microphones. So get ready to rock.
Like I said, my dad said, if you want something done right, do it right the first time, then you don't got to go back and redo it, you know? So I go in and make sure the vocals are pristine. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a demo, an indie record, a major label, I do the same exact thing for everybody. It's just the dollar amount I get paid after I'm done is the only thing that changes.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. This episode is sponsored by OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, your trusted source for memory and speed upgrades, DIY installs, and used Macs for your studio. Let OWC focus on keeping your studio Mac in killer condition so that you can focus on making great music. Why ditch your existing Mac when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and learn how you can supercharge your studio Mac, the speed to create, the capacity to dream. Now find out how awesome your studio can be at OWC. This episode is sponsored by JZ Microphones with a unique golden drop capsule design. The Vintage Series V67 and V11 microphones offer Class A discrete amplifier circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and advanced built-in shock mount technology to bring a rich, warm sound to your studio with crisp clarity and detail that will make you wish that you had discovered these mics a whole lot sooner. Go to jzmic.com or click the link in the show notes below and use the limited time coupon ROCKSTAR right now to get 50% off their Vintage Series microphones. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Billy Decker. Originally from Nebraska, he studied criminal justice before following his calling in music to become one of the highest-ranking students at Full Sail Center for the Recording Arts in 1992. Then in 94, Billy moved to Nashville, where he's been working ever since. He has mixed 15 number ones to date, most recently Chris Young's Hangin' On. Before that was Losing Sleep. And he's mixed for Kenny Chesney, Darius Rucker, Jason Aldean, Jaime Lynne Spears, and Sam Hunt, making history in July of 2014 when Sam Hunt became the most added new artist of all time. Billy also had the honor to mix George Jones's last album before he died. Billy works in a unique way, and I'm going to quote from Billy here. I mix really fast. Most of my mixes are finished in between 2 and 3.5 hours. To be able to do this, I use a lot of templates in Pro Tools. Instead of spending 2 hours EQing a kick drum, I can do it in 30 seconds because I've set up templates for the album that outline all the basic parameters for each instrument. Then I can focus on fine-tuning and bringing levels up and down, working on an entire mix rather than focusing on individual adjustments. It's a great way to work. It's really fast, efficient, and most importantly, it's fun. Billy also makes signature mixing plugins for Joey Sturgis Tones, where you can find all-in-one tools for drums, bass, guitars, vocals, and keyboards that model Billy's tried and true methods for mixing quickly to get that hit country sound that he's so well known for. Please welcome Billy Decker to Recording Studio Rockstars. Billy, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready to rock.
Dude, I'm thrilled to be meeting you and have you here at the studio joining us on the podcast. It's a real pleasure.
Thanks for inviting me over. So it's this is a fantastic place you've got here. I usually am, whenever I've done past podcasts, I'm always just stuck in my own studio in front of a computer screen with headphones on, Skype talking to somebody around the world or something. So it was nice to get out and actually come over to another facility and share some espresso with you before we got going, and
right on, man.
And see some new blood.
I think when this is airing, when people are listening to this, it may be different weather, but at the moment for us, it's beautiful, beautiful spring day here in Nashville.
We're both in shorts, flip flops. You're barefoot. I barely got shoes on, so
Yeah, I already
call that a win-win for both of us here.
I already kicked a mic stand with my little toe walking around the studio. So
all we're missing is a beach. If we could move Nashville to Miami, that would be my ultimate goal. I would be the happiest guy in the world.
Well, you started out, spending time in school down in Orlando.
True.
At Full Sail. Were you tempted by University of Miami and going all the way, further south at the time?
No, I had already grabbed a bachelor's of criminal justice and spent all my college years in Nebraska at the University of Nebraska. And this was just something, I went to that 9-month trade program they had at Full Sail at the time. Now it's like 2 years and costs you more than a house. Back then it was still reasonably affordable. So I never wanted to, I don't know why I never went farther south. In hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20. And I'll tell you a funny story. I actually got offered a job in Nashville right out of that recording school. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. There's no way in hell I'm ever moving to Nashville mixing country music. There's no way. I'm not wearing boots. I'm not wearing a hat. And 3 years later, I end up, credit card in a U-Haul. And 25 years later, here we are.
We were talking about this before, but I was trying to remember. I hope I'm not wrong in this, but I think Steve Albini told me that he was also from Nebraska. So, that is about as far from country music, if there's any correlation to your original state and the style of music that you grew up around.
Yeah, the only correlation probably between Nebraska and country music is there literally are dirt roads in Nebraska. I haven't found a dirt road down here in Nashville since I've been here, to be honest with you, but there are tons back in Nebraska.
Right on, man. Well, tell us more about, who you are and how you got into being interested in music. Like, how'd you go from criminal justice to, I'm going to go learn how to mix records and go make country albums?
Well, I had always been interested in music and had played in bands in high school and in college. That was kind of like my part-time job, my spring break money job. And I tell everybody, every engineer is a failed musician, whether they want to admit it or not. We all usually wanted to be rock stars growing up, and then we couldn't do that or weren't good enough. So it's like, hey, I'll work on this side of the glass rather than the other side. But I finished college and was going to pursue something in law enforcement. And then right at the last second, I was like, man, I just don't think I want to spend the rest of my life doing that and be miserable, You'd
rather be a rule breaker.
Exactly. So I found out where, if you can't be a rock star, what's the next best thing? Well, make rock star music. Well, where do you go to make music? And back then there was like 2 schools, and this was the top one to go to. And so I just enrolled myself and went down there and did the program and fell in love with working behind the scenes, And then when I got out, they were real helpful in helping me find an internship. That's one of the strong points of that school. So I actually I think I was told I was the first student to ever go abroad in the Caribbean. And I went down to the island of St. Martin and worked at a studio. And I only lasted about 3 weeks because I ran out of money. It was horribly expensive down there in St. Martin. And I did get a little homesick and a little island fever. But I was doing island music, reggae, zouk. Z-O-U-K was a style of music that they did down there. And I learned how to do a lot of that and really learned how to EQ almost like a Jamaican reggae bass. You know what I mean? Which is, it's got its own unique sound. So I take that experience away from learning how to EQ, not compress, but EQ a reggae bass. From there, I came back to Nebraska and then eventually went out to California, Northern California, and secured an internship in San Francisco. The studio was located downtown, right off Market Street. It was an old bell factory owned by a producer and doing like alternative music and whatnot, alt rock.
Right. This is the era for that. Mm-hmm. Perfect timing. Mm-hmm.
Faith No More was real popular around that area and bands like that, So anyway, they swapped me out room and board. They didn't pay me, but they swapped me out room and board above the studio. There was like a little efficiency apartment upstairs.
So you had a place to sleep and you had food and you had music in a studio.
I had to buy my own food, but I had music studio and a place to live.
Because I was going to say, what else is there at that age?
Back when you're 20, 24, 23, 24. So I did that for 3 months and got a chance to work with a bunch of pretty cool producers, and all I was doing was aligning tape machines, analog tape machines. So I could almost align a machine in about 40 minutes, and we would turn it over, and I got really good. I can't even tell you how to turn one on now.
So this wasn't the Studer 827, the one with the automated alignment in it?
No. It was
We're talking about manual alignment,
correct, with a little tweaker and everything.
And I bet you missed that a lot.
Yeah, every night I go to bed almost in tears from not being able to do that ever again. Ever.
Well, that's great. So, you've obviously been surrounded by a lot of different music. Do you find that you have a pretty vast appreciation of musical styles and musical genres as well?
I do, and I tell everyone I've got a slogan, have audio, will mix. So I tell everybody, if you want to be successful and make a living in this business, don't discriminate. So if somebody comes to you with a country project, mix it. If somebody comes to you with a metal project, mix it. If they come with whatever, just mix it. You may prefer one style over the other, but I tell everybody, Bobby Flay probably doesn't like everything he cooks on that Beat Bobby Flay show, but he's still a great chef. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to like everything he makes, but he can still be awesome at it. So,
well, I always, I've said this on the show too. I feel like one of the things you discover when you're making records is that you can have an appreciation for music, and then the more you make records and learn how to do it, you begin to have an appreciation for the craft of making records too. And those two things can really exist together.
And I've really learned to appreciate and almost become a student of frequencies. I mean, I have made it my goal. Unfortunately, I didn't major or minor in music, which is one of my biggest regrets in college. If I had a theory background, and to this day, I'm trying to get my daughter to major in music, which she is pursuing right now. And I would love to almost go back and take like a community college class or even online, a theory class, just because I think it would make, like, for instance, when I'm tuning vocals, I've got a friend who's a session player, and he's like, oh, yeah, you don't even need to draw that out. Just put it in the key of G and take out the fifth harmonic diminished minor upside down and take that note and add that one and then flip it upside down. And he hits play, and it's like perfect. And I'm like, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, that's like the circle of fifths or whatever they were talking about,
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I just thought you put it in G and hit play. And he's like, no. So if I had, that would probably be my biggest regret, is not getting a theory background. But I have tried to make up for it by just being a student of frequencies. So one thing that's really helped me along the way in my workflow and has made me so fast is I know exactly where, take for instance, an acoustic guitar lives. I know instantly when I reach for the EQ, I can go boom, 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 and it's 99% of the time, every single acoustic's going to fall within that. And that goes for almost every single instrument. So
yeah, nice.
You figure that out, and which is why I built those plugins with Joey. When he came to visit and we did this interview and I was on his Nail the Mix show, he's like, you and I are more similar than you think. I do metal, of course. You do country, Decker. But he's like, we could be twin brothers joined at the hip. So he's like, let's build a set of plugins knowing what you know about those frequencies, knowing these plugins are going to work instantly 95% of the time without even tweaking. You just put them on, it's like done.
That's usually how I feel when I'm trying to make music. I'm just like, can I just have the right the right answer so I can hear the music that I'm trying to make?
Yeah, and I've spent 25 years sweeping through frequencies, find the pain, reduce the gain. I know exactly where everything's going to live. Which is why my templates work so good, because if I've got a male vocalist, I'll pull in a template that's got a male vocalist, and if he's singing a little hard or if he's a little bitey, I'll know to pull in the template that's got a limiter on the vocal as opposed to a compressor, just because I know it needs to breathe a bit more. So You said, or actually I said, because you quoted me that it takes 2 to 3 hours. That's actually not correct. I'm down to about 45 minutes to an hour now.
Right, I can believe it.
And if I spend too much time on it, I literally will go backwards. I'll ruin a mix.
It probably took 2 to 3 hours to write that little bio that had the quote in it. But mixing's a lot faster than that.
Exactly.
I think
and it's not that I don't care or I'm skipping through it. It's just I came up back when I first started doing demos in Nashville, when the demo factory was, writers were galore, the industry was beautiful way back in the Garth Brooks days. Country music was crushing it. We literally, every single day, I would have to mix 5 or 6 songs and have them turned into the publisher. Otherwise, these writers would miss getting a cut. That's how fast everything was working. So I had to figure out how in the morning, get up, track a band up till about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, sing it, and then mix everything and have it done that day, all in one day.
And this is, where were you starting out in Nashville that gave you all that kind of training to just be cranking on music?
I went to work for music publishers, and almost every single music publisher had a studio in their basement or would go to a specific studio. I worked at Famous Music. I worked at County Q, which is back in the day known for doing huge volumes of demos.
Yeah.
Goodness, Island Bound had a studio I worked at. The old Warner, what's now the new Warner Chapel studio I worked at. You name it.
And these were studios where you were still using a tape machine and a mixing console at that point too, right?
Yeah, most of them had mixing consoles and tape machines, although a lot of those were ADATs. That was right when ADATs were popular, and that Mackie hard disk recorder. There was another one, Radar. Remember the Radar machine?
Oh, yeah.
The Radar machines.
I think they still sound pretty good.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they're great. They're great. And they operate super fast and whatnot. But just doing that every single day, that amount has just literally, if I just don't know how to slow down. I don't know how to take time just because that's all I know. I've never had I didn't have the luxury, I should say, of spending a day on a mix. Now I do. But after like 45 minutes or an hour, I'm like, okay, what else do I do? That sounds good to me. So what I like to do is pass that on to the clients, the savings, and say, you know what? I've done my part. Now let's get you involved, bring you in. Let's get your money's worth. So you need to be a big part of this project at all as well. So I like them to come over, tweak the mix, hang with me, be as involved as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, they have to live with this.
Yeah.
I get to go on and mix another record.
Right.
So
totally.
I'm very, very big on customer service. I love hanging with people. I'm a people person. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in the studio 9 times out of 10 because all I do is mix every day. So I usually just keep the news channel on or the tennis channel or the weather and just I'm mixing. And then when I do get a chance, I love when clients come over and tweak the mix.
Nice. Wait, can the news and the weather be on in the control room while you're mixing, or does that have to be in a different room?
Oh, no. They're on. If you actually, all you got to do is go to my, not Snapchat, but Instagram or Facebook. And 9 times out of 10, if I film a video of me mixing something, I'll always accidentally get the TV screen in it so you can see what I'm watching.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be said too for creating stuff and being like mildly almost distracted at the same time. I think, who was the, somebody's going to shoot me down for not remembering the name, but the name of the famous jazz producer who recorded in New Jersey in his house, made all those great records for Blue Note and stuff. I remember hearing that he would like read the newspaper while the band was performing. And if it was a good take, he would look up from his paper, and that was like the story that went with it and everything. And I was like, that's how we listen to a lot of stuff. And
that's one of the main reasons why I still bounce down in real time. And I'm on Pro Tools 10. I've got 11 on my laptop, and they're up to 12 now, and they've got that offline speed bounce, But I actually pipe it through an old 1999 boombox that's got line ins. When I bounce, I turn it down real low. I'll get up and go get a cup of coffee and just walk around in my lounge. But I'm passively listening, and I literally can hear if I've made a mistake or if something's screwed up, and I'll run back in and stop it. So I'm not paying attention, but I am at the same time.
Well, I find that when we start doing other things, it's like our subconscious is listening to the music, and I might be more inclined to pick up on a problem and hear something if I'm like making the coffee, walking around, doing stuff, and it's playing, than if I'm staring at a screen, you know.
I've also got one other little weird quirk that maybe you can help me figure this out. For some reason, I've always loved mixing in a cold environment, in a cold studio. Too cold almost, where everybody's like, damn, dude, it's like a meat locker in here. So, and at first I thought, well, you know, everybody says recording studios are cold because when you have those big, huge desks, they just put off so much heat. You know, the air conditioner's always going. But the more I thought about it, I started getting, I don't know, maybe I was drinking one night way too much whiskey and got way too inside myself. But I started thinking about the physics and the speed of sound, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sound travels through denser air slower than warmer air. Is that true or false? The speed of sound, can it change, or is the speed of sound always the speed of sound?
Oh, it does change. It does change. I don't remember which direction it goes, but I think you're right. I think in cold air, it might travel quicker. Because the molecules
are tighter together, it's denser, so it would slow down.
Yeah.
So in essence, I am slowing sound down so I can hear easier in a cold room.
There you go.
I don't know if that makes any amount of sense, but if I mix in a warm room, I'm not only uncomfortable, but it doesn't sound as good.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. So, well, like I said, maybe I was drinking too much whiskey. Who knows?
This is over 200 interviews into the podcast, and it's the first time anybody's ever referenced the importance of the temperature when you're mixing. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, I think that that's the kind of observation that comes from somebody who is really specialized in and chosen something to repeat so many times that you know it inside and out, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't mix as many songs as I used to, but back in the heyday, there was one year I mixed I actually cracked 1,500 songs in 1 year.
Wow.
I mixed over, and, you know, a lot of those were demos, a few records here and there back in the day, but most of those were just, you know, songwriter demos or independent projects and stuff. But yeah, I cracked 1 year. It was like 1,507 mixes or something like that.
Well, every year I take a studio down to the Bonnaroo Festival and do something called the Hay Bale Studio there, where we record bands performing backstage in our studio live, and then I mix it while they're doing it. So,
oh wow!
Then my mixes are only about 3.5 minutes to complete at that stage, but you know, I don't know if they stand up against yours or not.
I'm sure. And you know what, though? We're probably identical because you're template mixing. You've everything's, your kick's ready to go, your snare. It probably doesn't change a whole lot other than the source material.
Yep. I'm moving the faders.
Correct.
Making some EQ decisions, but usually they're pretty small at that point.
And then just slap a big old compressor and a limiter on the two bus to lock it in, and
That's
you're
right.
done.
And also have a mastering engineer in the back of the room to take care of the rest of it. But one thing that does change mix to mix too is like, you know, the effects levels and like shifting those around and tap tempo and all that kind of fun stuff, which we'll get into here in a minute. Tell us more about your studio. What kind of speakers do you like to listen on that help you, you know, hear just right in a cold room?
I've had a set of Mackie 824, HR 824s, and I upgraded to the Mark IIs a few years back. I literally have tried every single speaker on the market. When I was at Soundstage, the owners came to me and said, dude, we'll buy you anything. You're cranking out mixes. You're doing great. We love you. You're keeping our studio busy. Let us return the favor. Let us buy you the best listening environment we can do. So, I mean, Chuck Ainlay was working in the back at the time, and he had these concrete speakers that were like 10 grand a piece, or so. I can't even remember what they were. Maybe they were steel.
Literally made out of concrete.
Yes, and there were steel speakers he had. I mean, Chuck was always trying new stuff, the best of the best, you know. So I literally went through and tried cheap, medium price, all the way up to the ridiculousness, the most expensive ones ever made, and I could not get anything to sound as good as those Mackies. And I've had them plugged in to a 18-inch Quested sub from day one that I run that's barely audible. The sub, it's real low, but for some reason, there's a dip at like 1K. I just had my room scoped. I had some fellas from Sonar Works come in, and they brought that microphone, and it's that plug-in that, they stopped by. A friend of mine works for them. Yeah, from Latvia. So they came in, and they found, they said, your room looks great. And I actually designed it myself, and it's a total fluke. Wherever the corners were, I was like, you know, pat him up, you know. But
Overstuffed chair.
Yes, I've got a woodworking background, so I was pretty good at making baffles and wrapping the fabric and stuff like that. But
is that because when you were in criminal justice, you wanted to design your own gavel? You wanted to build your own gavel? Is that what it's all about?
But there was a 1K dip in my room, and that Sonar Works, when they came in, it fixed that, and all of a sudden everything sounded so nasally in there. And it's just, I think once you get used to a certain set of speakers, don't change. I had heard rumor that a really well-known producer here in town always loved to run out to his car and check mixes. Well, when that car died, he actually put that in his house in a room, and so he wired it up so he can go just right next door to a room, this half of a car, there's no engine anymore and the tires are off and stuff, but he kept the inside of the car because he liked the way the doors rattle and stuff.
I don't
know if that's
like
true
that.
or false, but I heard from a pretty reliable source that he does that.
I still love checking in the car.
I do as well.
I don't check in the car quite like I did initially checking in the car was like print mix, run to car, listen, run back, change, Now it's more like print stuff, take it to the car and just kind of drive around, do the errands with it in there so I can hear how it's sounding.
One thing that kills me is when I get a call and my client's like, I just checked on the iPhone and I think we're a little bass shy. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Let me rewind, take you back to the beginning. Let's get off the iPhone. Let's take it somewhere where you can at least hear what we've been doing.
Do you find that the iPhone, those kind of references are still valuable or have meaning at all?
To me, they're absolute garbage.
All right.
Now, it's good God. I mean, sure, I suppose every reference is valuable, but I don't personally listen. I've got a little JBL Bluetooth thing that I pump it into, and that's more valuable to me than hearing an iPhone. I mean, I can't even tell what's going on if I don't even listen to an iPhone. I mean, I always plug it into my car or something like that, but through the iPhone speakers, no.
Do you ever spend much energy and time considering, the end user, who they are, how they like to listen to your music, and what kind of speakers they listen on?
Yeah, and I have listened through earbuds just to check. But after all that, I went back and I'm like, you know what? As long as I can make it sound good, and I know it's a good mix, it's going to sound good anywhere, or if it's bad, it's going to sound bad anywhere. I don't care what you're using, So just get it good. And I know what it's supposed to sound like, what records are supposed to sound like in my studio and whatnot. So if I can make them sound good there, they'll sound good anyway.
You didn't go out and buy a pickup truck?
No.
Cool. All right. Let's see. What else do we want to ask you about? I love hearing that, your advice on monitors is get used to the ones that you get used to and don't switch them up. But I would ask you this. You said you went through the process of choosing monitors. What do you remember about how to do that well? And do you have any advice for, because there are a lot of listeners who are like, I got it. I'm at the point of needing to select something and I might stick with it for a while.
I just referenced a lot of stuff that I knew sounded really good wherever I had heard it, that other people had done. And those Mackies just sounded good to my ears. Now, other people can't stand them, but I can't do ribbon tweeters. Ribbon tweeters just have something about them that just, you might as well just take a butter knife and be shoving it right in my forehead when I listen to ribbon tweeters. It drives me bonkers. I can't do it. It hurts almost. Even a good mix, there's just something. So I've always avoided that type of speaker. They just never sounded good. So yeah, I would just say find something that just sounds good to your ears.
But it's listening to other people's records that you just have a sense, they sound good to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess an appropriate genre. Do you remember listening to a lot of similar music to what you were mixing at the time?
No, I always referenced like all the Mutt Lange stuff, like the big Def Leppard. That's the kind of the era I came up in. The Bob Clearmountain, when he mixed the Bryan Adams for Mutt Lange and whatnot. And everybody's like, why are you such a Mutt Lange fan? And I'm like, well, he's been wrong, never?
Well, I like that, you're reminding us, it's like you can you can, for making decisions about what's good to you,
Yeah.
you can still stick to your roots, whatever that is. I mean, my daughter's roots won't be Mutt Lange. She's
Right.
13. It's going to be like a Taylor Swift mix that I don't know,
Correct.
maybe you did for all I know.
Nope, never have done one of those yet.
What about more, break down your studio a little bit more. Like what kind of environment allows you to mix well? Do you like to sit? Do you like to stand? Do you walk around the room while you're mixing?
Yeah, I've always been seated in front. Ever since I've been in Nashville, when I started working on Pro Tools, I've always been seated in front of a Digidesign Pro Control. And 4 of the studios here in town had those Argosy desks, the Series 1, where it feels like it was a housing, but it looks like a real console. And you drop the desk into it, the Pro Control, which is just no audio goes through it. It's just purely faders moving,
Yeah.
But it always felt like a real console. And I loved the armrest, and the height of the speakers were smaller than sitting behind like an SSL or whatnot. The depth of an SSL and the height always threw me off. I could never mix sitting behind an SSL. But this actually, I guess the way I have it set up, I don't decouple my speakers. They're just sitting right on the top panel. And I've actually got my seat low enough where the tweeters shoot over my head. And I think the reason I like that is because back when I was mixing, and still am, so many things, just having that high frequency pummeling my ears all day long, I figured out if I could get below that, I would last longer. And I wouldn't fatigue as long. So I sit kind of low, and I got to admit, I slouch. Everybody's like, Decker, you're slouching, quit slouching.
Low rider.
Yeah, exactly. But the chairs, I don't do anything fancy. When they wear out, I just go over to like Staples or one of the, Office Depot or whatnot, and just buy a new chair that feels comfortable.
You're an executive mixer.
Exactly. But I do get up and take lots of breaks because I mix so fast, So I work really good under pressure with deadlines and in short bursts. That's why I get kind of stir crazy, and we'll get up, check my email, get something to drink, use the restroom, whatever, step outside, get some air, But I work really good that way. And I think if I was stuck in a chair for 2 or 3 hours at a time, I would go insane. I would be 500 pounds. I wouldn't move, and my brain would be mush. And
so we might as well say, Rockstars, Billy and I are about this almost exactly the same age. We figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're my older friend by a month.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We'll be 51.
Yeah.
Oh, no, 52.
52 soon.
And unfortunately, I thought this whole last year I was 52. So I've lost a whole year of my life.
That starts to happen.
And my wife's like, no, you're turning 52. I'm like, wow, I got it back.
We just needed to know when the 50 was so we didn't,
Exactly.
drop the ball on having some sort of birthday party. So yeah, and you seem to be in good shape. You look healthy, you look in good shape. I'm a little jealous of the fact that you still got hair.
Well, for my 50th birthday, I did not get a big party. I got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. That's what I got for my 50th birthday.
Wow, man.
So I actually lost all my hair, did the whole chemo route, and beat it 100%. It was the easiest thing I think I've ever taken on.
Wow.
And I think it's because I was so pissed that I got it. I don't know if you need to edit that word out or not.
No. You can say anything you want. We're explicit here.
Podcast MA.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just stayed. I think I channeled that anger into just be like, I'm only 50. There's no way I'm checking out this early,
Yeah.
So I beat it hands down. So all I got is a little scar on my chest where they used to plug me in and drip that juice to try to kill it,
Wow.
That's the only remainder. But funny enough, my hair came back darker. I had a lot of gray on the sides, not a lot, but it literally came back darker.
Wow.
So yeah, I've got thicker hair and darker hair.
Well, that's impressive that you were able to beat it like that, and I'm glad to hear that, man.
Yeah,
Sorry
it's
to go through that.
It's definitely not a death sentence when people they say the C word and it's like cancer. It's, oh, this evil word, you're going to die and stuff. So I could have, but I ended up not. So
yeah, hopefully you don't have to repeat that like you do your mixes and, to get good at beating it. You did it the first time. Done.
Exactly. So,
but then, you get up and move around the room too. So you stay pretty active and healthy. Any other stuff for you? Just like, are you an exerciser or anything?
No, I've never been an exerciser and I probably should. I mean, I'm getting a little gut on me, but hey, I'm over 50 now.
I might have a little bit of that too.
Yeah, who cares? I do stay pretty active though. And I think it's because I feel guilty. I work inside cold, sitting in a chair studio all day.
Yeah.
So as often as I can, I mow my own grass. I love getting outside sweating. I love doing woodwork in the garage and cutting down trees, anything, just getting dirty, being outside. Love being at the beach, love being in the lake, all that good stuff.
This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can go to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level. And you can start right now with my free introduction to mixing course, Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is that these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you are in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. All right, well, let me talk about, your studio and your workflow too. I haven't heard you mention it, but do you like to mix and take care of everything that needs to happen solo? Do you find it's beneficial to have an assistant, and do you work with other people as part of your sort of workflow?
I came up not having the luxury of being able to have an assistant, because back in the demo days, you couldn't afford it. So
you were the assistant.
I was the assistant. Even when I would track these bands, I would be the guy that would go out, plug in the microphones. If there was something wrong, I'd run out, fix it, come back. I was a one-man band.
Yeah.
And I think I just came up that way, so I just stayed that way, If my dad was always like, if you want something done right, just do it yourself. So
that's often true, yeah.
I think, and even now, I've had a bunch of people ask if they could intern or come over, and I actually tried maybe once or twice, kind of a test run, and I found myself not getting as much done because I felt like I was teaching and explaining and talking, whereas I was like, man, we could have mixed 5 in the time I just have been screwing around with one, and then we took a lunch, and I'm not getting anything done, and so... But I do have a gentleman or actually a couple guys that will burn my stems for me if like a band comes in and they want stems to play live and the whole thing needs to be consolidated wave files with a 2-bar click out front that the drummer can lock and they can play live with all these Ableton stems or whatever. He will come in at night and I swap him out studio time so he can come in on the weekends or at night and earn money doing overdubs and mixing and all that. And in return, he burns my versions for me.
That's great. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so it's win-win. And then when he does stuff, label prep, when I do a record or something, obviously the label pays him. And there's instances where I'll pay him as well.
Yeah, sure.
But for the most part, it's just a kind of a mutually agreed win-win for a couple people. So I guess the barter system, you could call it that.
Yeah, sure.
It's alive and well.
The one thing I'm noticing too is that you're not saying that part of your quick mixing method is that it goes through an assistant first on its way to you or anything like that.
I tell everybody, just send me the session, or if you're not in Pro Tools, if you're in Logic or Reaper or Studio One, whatever you got, just send me consolidated wave files, all the same length. I'll take it. I have just learned how to clean it up. I will even tune the vocals. I'm used to editing drums. So just throw it at me and let me do it. It's 9 times out of 10, it's better if I do it, because if you send me a consolidated tune vocal, a lot of times you might clip a breath and I might need to make it sound more natural and fly one.
Yeah.
So I'm like, just give it to me. Let me have everything. The minute I get something, I instantly do a save as, name it my hashtag decorator. So I can always, if you ever come over to my studio, and all you got to do is go to the decorator icon, click on it, and that's the current mix. So it's not only a play on words in my email, but it's a way for people to go, okay, that's the file we need to be using rather than.
So it might be name of song, mix one, hashtag decorator in a Pro Tools name.
Yeah, well, you'll open up, it'll be like, give my broken heart a break. You'll open it up and you'll see give my broken heart a break, the original icon, and then I'll say decorator below that. Right, so if I need to go back and look at what you've done, say you had plugins on, I love that delay, or I did something cool with an effect, I can go back to your original, reference it, and import it into the final mix session.
Right on.
So,
okay, so you don't necessarily automatically import all the plugins that were there. You might start back up a step.
I blank out your session. I'll create mine, blank it out, start from scratch, get rid of probably more stuff than you want me to tell you. I've deleted all your 18 room mics and you got 5 mics on a electric guitar. Well, guess what? 99% of the time I go find the one that says SM57. Delete. Everything else goes in the garbage. But I always start from scratch. So I'll have your blank audio. I'll blank you out, and then I import my template in, and then I drag down, locked in time. There's a key command on Pro Tools where you can't go left or right. You can only go up or down. And I just drag it down, drop it right in.
Because control drag, I think maybe locks it in place.
And you literally hit play, and by me looking at the size of the waveforms, I'll gain up or minimize the actual clip, just because I know on, like, say, the kick drum, it's going to hit the compressor that hard, but if it's that big, it's going to hit way too much. If it's that big, it's not going to hit it at all. So I've got to put just about a 1/4 inch at the top, 1/4 inch at the bottom of the waveform.
Does that matter whether we're sort of in medium view or large view or whatever?
Always medium view. I work in medium view. I use mini view to drag it down. Other than that, I live in medium view.
Yeah, so, I think I like medium view a lot too.
Yes, and on the edit page, I have a lot of engineers that open it up so they can access on the edit window where you can see the waveforms. They've got their faders over here and stuff. I never do that. So I always just keep it, the edit window is big. It seems like you've got it right there where your sends are open, insert sends in and out. Drives me crazy.
You don't want to see them.
It's like throwing a baseball left-handed. I can't even fathom working that way.
Well, because you're not reaching for a bunch of things to make lots of changes in those window zones, right? You've already set them. So now.
And then if I do, I just flip over to my mix page, pop that up. And so I'm constantly ka-chee. And if you've ever seen me in a video, people are like, Decker, you got this nervous twitch with your hand. You're like, Apple S. You're going to break the S key. And it's just, I save. I've got my computer, so it saves 100, so I only lose a minute if the computer crashes. I am on a battery backup, so that helps.
No, I'm with you on that. Actually, the first thing I do is I change it to 20 and 2 minutes, but it's only because I'm nervous that if I change it to save more backups than that it might slow something down. But man, if I lose 1 minute, I'll be pissed. I know I just worked really hard on that decision and that edit and whatever it was. And I guess the other frustrating thing about losing, like if Pro Tools quits on you or crashes and you lose something, it's like, it doesn't tell you what you just lost. You have to go figure it out, so you don't want to have to
reboot the machine, open the session. You're like, oh, okay, that's where, usually I can look at the time and go, okay, well, the last 30 seconds, I think I was dragging an S over or something like that and go back and do it. So,
well, all right. So very cool. Yeah. And Rockstars, I have a YouTube playlist of Billy's fantastic records that he's mixed and some great videos where he explains his work process. And you talk about the Bus Glue series over at
doing those.
JST, Joey Sturgis Tones. So very cool plugins too, man. I'm excited. I'm going to have to go try those out myself too.
I have to get you a copy and you can put them through the paces and see what you think. But when we were building them, Joey's got this Swedish guy that designs his graphics, right? And then I think one of his coders, the secret genius that has all his code, is an Argentinian dude. So neither of them speak very good English. So I said, all right, here's what we need to do. I said, the way I want these to look, do me a favor and just send that designer an email and just say 2 things. Just say HBO and say Westworld, the series Westworld. Like the train, when it's rolling in, it's like that old steampunk with the thick, chunky meters and the old VUs. I said, that's what I want my stuff to look like, kind of beat up metal, maybe some wood and stuff. And the dude nailed it. So But the first round he sent back, he was like, tell every single plugin has a decorate button on it. Well, his English is bad, so he thought I was the deserator. So he took the K out, and so every plugin we got back, he said decerate. I'm like, what's that? That doesn't even mean anything. Of course, decorate doesn't either, but it's like a play on my words, so at least that's close.
No, it's great. That's such a perfect play on it.
Over in Sweden, I'm the deserator.
The deserator. Deseret. It sounds like some kind of French fancy word for something. I don't know what it means. Okay, cool. So let's see what I want to ask you. So when you're working in a workflow where the plugins, you know, where most of us get lost for hours in the inserts and this, you know, maybe the sounds, but probably the inserts, you know, putting too many plugins on our tracks. You know, you've got templates that you've arrived at that allow you to, you know, set the levels of something, and it comes out sounding real close to right already, if not all the way there. Which means that when you're working with the Pro Control, you know, you're really focused on faders and panning and levels and mixing that way. So do you find you have hands on faders a lot while you're mixing?
None. I mix with a mouse.
Oh, shit, there you go.
I have all it's there for is to fill in that space to make me feel like I'm sitting behind a recording
right,
console.
And if you do have, you know, somebody's looking over your shoulder,
then I'll turn on all the lights and it starts flashing. I'll be like, whoa, I've been busy today. Look at all them lights, you know. But no, I just mix with an old mouse. I use the old school one, just the one click. I can't do a trackball. It's like throwing baseball left-handed again. And I never touch faders. I have the old chunky keyboards, the old Apple ones, and I've got like 5 of them. Just in case one goes bad, because I'm always Apple S. I'm always blowing the S key out and the Apple button. But that's the only way. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, and everybody's like, man, you could go faster than that if you had this keyboard. I'm like, dude, I'm already like lightning fast. I'm going to explode if I go any faster.
Yeah, I like to sit down in a chair some.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, if I go faster than this, I don't ever get to sit down for long enough to even feel like I just sat. What about the fader levels in Pro Tools? Is that part of templatizing? In other words, if you set the input of an acoustic guitar into your chain, does it come out sort of panned and balanced in the mix, or is that something that's still you just got to do for every song?
It is. I got to read an article, I think, one time about Chris Ordaggi. He goes, there's 3 pan spots. Over fucking there, or right fucking in the middle. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I like that. So I literally adhere to that. I literally have almost just 3 pan spots, you know. I'm a huge hard left, hard right, kick, snare, bass, and vocal are in the middle. Other than that, get the hell out of the way, you know.
What about the instruments? You know, country traditionally
now,
might
those
have...
I will cheat. Fiddle and steel, I'll go 9 and 3.
Those are things that have something to say in the middle of a mix,
but
you know?
Pianos, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, all that stuff, just as hard over to the left and as hard to the right as possible.
Dig it.
And unfortunately, I mix really hot, and I don't know why I started doing it because it's totally wrong, but there's a key command in... I think my voice just cracked. Key command. There's a key command in Pro Tools where you hold down Option and you can click on the fader and it snaps it to 0. And I got so used to doing that I was overloading my 2-bus. And instead of bringing everybody down over here, I'm like, well, hell, I'm just going to bring the 2-bus down. So now, after, good Lord, 17 years of doing that, my 2-bus lives at like -11. And I had the lead engineer over at Soundstage, the guy that he's like used to be the studio manager, and he came up engineering and design. He's the tech and stuff. He's known tons of engineers and worked underneath them and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you know what, Decker? He's like, I would love to be able to help you. He's like, but you do everything so bass-ackwards, it doesn't even make sense, but somehow it works. He's like, but I don't even know how to give you a suggestion to fix it. He's like, I guess if it sounds good, it's right. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing it that way.
Yeah, I think that's good thinking. I mean,
and I've tried to get that 2-bus. I start at 0 and bring up the faders. Before long, I'm hitting Option and snapping them to 0, and it's way too hot, and I'm coming. It just it doesn't work,
You know, I noticed that watching one of your videos that as you were setting some levels, your levels would be slamming on the individual tracks, and I'd see red lights and stuff. And it's interesting to be reminded that, like, if it sounds good, it is good. Another person that I bring up repeatedly on this, but again, it was the first person I watched mix who was a pro, was Tom Lord Alge. And he seemed totally unfazed by red lights. He knew when to use them, and he trusted his ear, and he didn't give a shit about that stuff.
And I tell you what, the only time, and I'm very cognizant of this, the only time you can hear distortion, and I was taught this pretty early on, is at low volumes. So turn it way low and listen to the mix, and as long as it's clean and it's not, and I've been working in Pro Tools long enough, I know the difference between analog distortion and digital distortion.
Right.
And as long as it's clean, who cares, I'm convinced Pro Tools built in some red light buffers. They had to have, because I slam them all day long and it's not crapping out.
Yeah.
So I think they blessed us with like an extra 2 to 3 dB of headroom.
Well, and I've noticed that different DAWs have different treatments of red lights and stuff. Mm-hmm. When I was playing around with, when I was giving time to my inner closet DJ and learning Ableton Live and trying to program some stuff in there, I'd take everything and just slam the output mix, just destroy it, and it sounded great. Yeah. I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, what? This is supposed to not work. It's not supposed to not sound right.
Yeah, we're all taught so many rules coming up. Like, I guess in a traditional console, your dynamics is first, and then your EQs, and all that stuff. I've got on my acoustic guitars, and even the plug-in that I did, it's EQ first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then into a compressor, and then into like a clipper, and then a limiter or something like that.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't work.
Wait, now do you have to kill me after you just told me that? Because I've heard about that. Yeah, that's cool. And
I stole it from somebody else. It really doesn't matter if you steal it from me.
Well, I guess what matters is it sounds great when we're done. Because if you figured out how to do it, and then I get your plug-in and put it on mine, and then whoever I'm mixing for thinks it sounds great, pretty sure that's a win-win-win.
Oh, yeah, for everybody.
Yeah, well, so, well, there's a lot of questions I want to ask, but before we take a brief break, let me ask you these 2 quick questions. Yeah. What are the, I always do that. I always say 2 quick questions, then I'll ask you the first one, then I'll forget what the second one was.
But, well, ask them both, and we'll write them down.
Let me start with this. Stuff that, you talked about mixes coming to you, and there might be like 5 mics on the guitar, and I'm sure there's other stuff. So my question is, what are some of the things, where do we keep shooting ourselves in the foot or wasting our time and our efforts recording and producing before we hand it over to a mixer like you? Where could we just give ourselves a break and save a whole lot of time?
There's been a couple instances where I don't even use room mics. I just use the overheads. The one that cracks me up is when they do so many room mics. And I suppose that would make sense on maybe like on a Chris Stapleton record or something like that, where that's the sound of the drums.
Right.
But I'm never going to get called to mix that record. So I can go on record right now. You'll never see my name on a credit in that genre. Casey Musgraves is never going to call me to mix a record. I promise you. But, the Def Leppard reunion, they may call me. So that's the
right.
thing. But I also never in my life have ever used a kick-out mic, just because I always 100% replace with 3 samples that I know work. I've got a sample that does exactly what a kick-out mic does, and I've heard it on the radio, so I know it doesn't blow the speakers out, but yet gives enough depth and warmth and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who was it the other day? They were doing a session, and the engineer goes, "Who's mixing this?" And the guy goes, "Decker." He's like, "Oh, shit." And he goes, "He ain't even going to use this, so I'm not even putting this on." He starts erasing all these room mics and the kick. He didn't even put the snare bottom on. He's like, "Decker's just going to erase it." So
we don't even need a kick-in mic. We're just going to have the beater hit the microphone.
Yes.
So you got a trigger.
Now I can do that style, but it's not what I enjoy or instantly reach for at first.
Yeah.
I just did a Canadian record where they wanted that sound. And so I did. I used the kick out and all that per their request. And that mix probably took me an hour and a half as opposed to 45 minutes if I would have just been doing my normal thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because I actually had to go, oh, I need to figure out how to make this sound good. I haven't done it for 20 years.
Now, the time frames that you're talking about, does that include going through and crossfading and tuning and all those kinds of things as well?
I will actually hit play once I get the session loaded in, and you can probably see this. I've got a couple videos out there where I've been filmed start to finish, you know. But I'll go put a tip and a tail on the song and clean the end up and the thing without even listening to the song yet. I'll just drag it in, go to the end, hit the last chord, see where it rings out, put the industry standard fade on there, which I don't know. I just made it up, 8 seconds or something, you know, whatever looks good at the time. And then I will hit play, mute the vocal, and I'll go through and clean the toms. I'm pretty picky about that because I put samples in as well, and I don't like all the cymbal bleed, pump and stuff. So I'll do that in real time, and I'll listen to the song, but I'll actually clean the toms in real time as the song's playing.
Wow.
So and it's always like a fun try to stay ahead of the cursor thing.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to go as fast as I can. And by the end of the song, I've heard the song, the toms are clean. Then I'll go back, do it again, find any rides I need to do. Usually the intro, turn around, the outro in country music. You got to bring the signature licks up, stuff.
Yeah.
Ride the solo, and then I'll go clean the vocals. And we'll go through and clean every single vocal so it's pristine because, like I said, my dad said if you want something done right, or no, he also said do it right the first time, then you don't got to go back and redo it. You know? So I go in and make sure the vocals are pristine. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a demo, an indie record, a major label. I do the same exact thing for everybody. It's just the dollar amount I get paid after I'm done. It's the only thing that changes. So
cleaning a vocal involves things like making sure that the breath fades up just, in the right kind of way before the lyric starts. Making sure the breath isn't too huge, right?
Right, yeah. A lot of times if a vocal gets compressed or something, and you can see it. I mean, I can look, after this long of doing it, I can just look and go, oh, that's going to be a trouble spot.
Right.
So I just put the slant fade on. There's a cool one you can do where you can make it almost like a U shape, and that really ducks it down.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. And then sometimes if it's just... I'll just cut it,
Right.
So
it sounds like they're gasping,
someone's got asthma or something,
Drowning in hit music.
Yeah.
And then at the end of a word, you need to put a nice tail on,
yes,
so that the sort of the headphone bleed and the noise in between isn't getting exaggerated. And I think one of the things that takes a minute to understand as you're learning how to mix is that by the time you're done, a mix that we're talking about, these kind of in-your-face pop mixes, country mixes. There's so much compression that the tiniest thing in there gets brought straight to the foreground.
Yeah, the P's
and that's why it needs so much.
It's like poof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it needs so much cleanup.
Yeah, and if you notice, if you've ever seen me mix, you'll notice that there's very minimal rides on my vocals as well, just because I've got them. Let's see, I've got them compressed, and then I've got them EQ'd, and then I've got them. Whatever the hell that Renaissance vocal does. What is that?
The RVox. I love RVox.
Yeah, what is that? Is it like a limiter or is it a
We're always guessing. It seems like it's compression and limiting and saturation
whatever
and EQ.
Mojo. Yeah, I've got that pulled down to minus 17 every single vocal.
That plugin's probably going to be on your voice right now on this podcast.
Nice. Well, make sure you pull it down to minus 17.
Oh, that's the magic sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot. And then I'll limit. Oh, no, then I double DS it. So I'll DS because of it bringing up. Remember we were talking about so much compression that the S's go crazy and the breaths, but I'll DS at the spit or the S mark, and then I also DS at the nasal frequency.
Yeah.
So I'm not DSing, I'm de-honking them is what I call it.
Interesting.
Because it's so compressed and so loud that I'll take out that 1 to 2K right in there, and it just softens the vocal.
Yeah.
And then literally all I do is find a sweet spot for the chorus and then bring it down 1 dB in the verse. So you'll literally just see like a little building block and 3 times, and that's it.
That's the way to do it. It's easy.
All the backgrounds go through a subgroup that just gets crushed, smothered, and covered like
like Waffle House
for vocals. And I actually built that into my vocal plugin, so it's just like just put it on. It's good. It's good.
Is it safe to say that background vocals, especially when you get that wall of wide stuff, that there's a whole lot less low end than it is in the lead vocal? Does it get sort of Is it safe for us to typically roll off
Yeah.
a lot more of the lows?
Big thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is how important it is, especially in a digital medium, to high pass stuff.
Yeah.
Because you are wasting so much energy and you've only got a certain amount. Like analog, in theory, it's endless, right? Infinity. Goes up, whatever, as far as that way. Digital, you've got a finite amount of space, and that's it. Once you run out of those bits or blocks or whatever they call them, so cleaning up all that garbage in that, especially the low end. My 2 mix, I'm always going to high pass at 32.5, 35, sometimes 40. Bass.
That's on the 2 mix itself.
That's on the 2 mix. Yeah.
Right.
Anytime somebody brings me an 808, the first thing I do is high pass at 40. High pass at 40, and that way I know for a fact as long as I don't ridiculously make it super loud, it's not going to do that boom in the car, which every 808 will if you do not high pass it. So
that's great.
And then bass always gets high passed at 70 hertz.
The bass guitar.
Always.
Fascinating.
It does not matter. It comes in instantly 70 hertz, and it always works. But ironically enough, I'll actually boost underneath that sometimes. So I'm high passing at 70, but I'm going down and cheating and boosting more low end below that. So
that's like kind of the classic pull tech, isn't it?
I don't know. I don't know if it's right or wrong. It sounds good and it works.
Just never
Doesn't
know.
blow your car speakers out. So.
Yeah. Well, and then that's the key. I mean, that's the one I'm always struggling with. I'm always trying to figure that one out, So, and I guess that's the beauty of what you have experienced and been able to put together is repeating something enough times to try, get it wrong, tweak it, get it right until you get somewhere where you're like.
20 years of blessed practice is what I call it, So that, and I've been fortunate enough to get stuff that's been on the radio so I can actually go, okay, next time I'm going to do that because that radio is, or it's making my doors rattle or something. It's like, okay, I got to go up higher on that.
Right.
Because of what radio is going to do to it, And that's a nightmare trying to decode radio. And at the end of the day, I've just found, just make a mix that sounds awesome and it'll be all right on the radio.
Right on. Well, let's take a break for just a minute.
Okay.
And we'll come back in for the jam session. Rockstars, a reminder that you can find links to what we're talking about here with Billy in the show notes. Just click through on your mobile device, or if you're on the blog post, rsrockstars.com, search Billy Decorator. Decorator.
Deserator if you're in Sweden.
Search the Deserator. Search Billy Decker, and that'll take you to the blog post. And there is a YouTube playlist waiting for you there that has a bunch of his great records, as well as
my 1-900 part-time job, sexy dancing thing that I usually don't mention. No, I'm joking.
No, that's the Deserator.
I wish I had a 1-900 number. How awesome would that be?
Man, that's it. I guess that was the original coaching line, right? People just call you up for mixing tips, and if the rate is high enough, you just be like, hold on, I'll pause on this number one hit right here and answer the phone. We'll see you in just a minute for the jam session. Are you using a Mac in your recording studio? Are you tired of feeling like the studio setup you worked so hard to create is becoming obsolete too quickly? Wouldn't it feel great to have a trusted friend to help you keep your existing Mac and studio setup current and relevant so that you can focus on the thing you love most, which is making great music? Well, now you can rely on OWC, Otherworld Computing, which you can find at OWC.com, whose mission it is to help you get the most mileage out of your existing Mac. Whether you need to upgrade your RAM, install an SSD drive, add more connectivity, or simply find a great used Mac that's ready to rock, OWC will help take your studio far into the future with a vast library of DIY install videos, 24/7 friendly support, and free shipping in the US on most items over $49. Why get frustrated and ditch your existing computer when you can take your studio far into the future with OWC? Learn more at OWC.com and find out how awesome your Mac can be at OWC. If you want to capture every nuance of a great performance in your studio, then you need to start with a microphone that is crafted with great care and attention to detail. JZ Mics in Riga, Latvia designs amazing sounding microphones that are handcrafted with jeweler's precision to bring you incredible detail in your recordings. At the heart of JZ microphones is the unique Golden Drop capsule design, which uses a lighter, faster diaphragm that delivers great clarity and fidelity while avoiding distracting colorations and distortions. Make sure to check out the Vintage Series V67 and V11 with Class A discrete amplifier circuitry, extremely low self-noise, and advanced built-in shock mount technology to bring a classic, expensive vintage sound to your studio for an affordable price. Jay-Z offers a 5-year warranty, free shipping to the US, and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Plus, for a limited time, you can use the coupon code ROCKSTAR to get 50% off their Vintage Series microphones. I got one. You're hearing my voice right now on the V67. Wouldn't it feel great to have one of these in your studio? Go to jzmic.com or click the link in the show notes below. Hey Rockstars, we're back now for the jam session. My guest today is Billy Decker, joining us here on Recording Studio Rockstars, talking about speed mix and number one hits inside Pro Tools.
Sí. Hola, mi amigos. Mi nombre es Guillermo No, I'm joking. It's for all my Latin friends. I've mixed plenty of Latin music too. I forgot to mention, I actually got offered a job on the border of Mexico in McAllen, Texas, doing Latino music. And it was like traditional music.
Wow.
And I ended up not taking it and took a job out in Virginia Beach doing R&B and hip hop instead.
This is all before coming to Nashville.
This is before coming to Nashville.
Man, you were busy. You went from Florida to Nebraska to San Francisco to almost down to the south of the border, and then to where, North Carolina?
Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's a nice spot. I spent one weekend there. It's a very nice little beach town.
That's a fun town.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's keep talking about this low cut stuff for just a moment, because I love that. And it is one of the big struggles for so many of us. Great tips on, I think you were saying for the kick drum of below 40 hertz, we maybe don't need it. Is that the one you were saying?
No, the bass is at 70, and on my drum sub, I actually don't high pass anything because it's eventually getting kicked out to the two
mix, and that kind of covers it.
But I actually, one of my samples is pretty 40 hertz heavy, which normally most people would reach for like 60 hertz. That's like the magic kick drum number. But my samples have the 60 built in, so I actually go deep down and kind of jam 40 in there, and that just makes me, I guess, feel bigger and better and louder and more powerful than everybody else down the block. That's why I do that. I got no reason to do it.
More booty than 60 hertz.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that. You now have a new sample pack out too, right? Drum shots?
I do. And I actually bounced down 5 kits that were number ones that I was lucky enough to get to mix. And I bounced them down using the only thing I didn't bounce down was the effects, but I did bounce down a room sample. So they are pre-EQ'd, pre-compressed, pre-everything. All you literally do is just put them on in trigger and put them on a fader. You don't even need to EQ them if you don't want to, and they're just ready to go. Just blend it in with maybe another drum or the real sample. And I always blend, the kicks are 100% replaced, just because I hate gating a kick and EQing it. And one of my samples is a real kick that I fell in love with and made it into a sample that was a total clean hit. So I'm like, well, that's better than having all this bleed and maybe the trigger or the gate opens accidentally or whatnot.
And consistency.
Yes.
We're always striving for more consistency in the drums when you're trying to mix an in-your-face mix.
But the snare drum, I went through a period where I was 100% replacing, and it was just machine gun city. I mean, there's just no way, even with all the new technology and whatnot, I always keep the reel in, and I actually keep the bottom in as well. And then I layer about 3 or 4 samples next to it. But the blend of those, and you always got to check to make sure everything's in phase. You can spot that really easy. But then when you do come to like a press roll, or if the dude's bouncing his stick on the snare in between the 2s and the 4s, you actually can ride that up, and it's like, oh, well, he's doing that. So I'm not hearing, he's got a great natural drum sound. But what they don't know is I've got the 2s and 4s getting banged over here to reinforce the reel. So you can get a more natural, consistent sound, I guess would be the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love using samples and one-shots. And I use some Slate stuff. But
Trigger, you said, yeah.
Yeah, Trigger. And so far, that's been the best device to fire off samples.
Well, I've talked about this
I had
on the
Drumagog, and just Triggers makes more sense to me.
Well, I've talked about this on the show before too. And we've been doing this a similar length of time, different places, different genres and stuff. But I know you've experienced trying to use triggers before we had tools like Trigger.
Right.
And it was quite a different process to try and drop all that stuff in by hand and everything.
I would definitely do that. So I got the Slate. Steven gave me a, back in the day, golly, he gave me the WAV files at like half price. You know what I mean? And he mailed me a CD that's got all the WAV files on it. That was what he was originally doing when he started out. And I used to put those in by hand. And I remember mixing, I think it was Rodney Atkins' first record. It's called Going Through Hell. Or not his first record, but the one that took off, And I put the samples in by hand. Trigger wasn't even happening then. And I think half of them were probably out of phase. I didn't know lining up waveforms or whatnot. And I don't even think I was using delay compensation. I was on like Pro Tools 5 or something. So now when I hear that on the radio, it's like, good Lord, I hear these flams left because I'm like super stickler about it now.
Yeah.
Now that I know. And, but God, when I hear that now, I'm just like, oh, it sounds like tennis shoes in a dryer or something, It's like, how did I let those go? The 4 on the floor, they're like, kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. But the thing was a 6-week #1, so at the end of the day, it didn't matter.
That's one of the things about
Makes for a good story.
Doing kick triggers and replacement in a mix is with the low end, it starts to screw up the low end when you're mixing a trigger against an original kick, because the original kick's always a little different every time, right? Mm-hmm. So then sometimes they're reinforcing, sometimes they're canceling a little, Yeah,
I always just reach for, and I've got a blend of samples that I always use 3, and by just adjusting, I've got the click, and I've got like the low, like a dance kick almost in there I always use that does like the 100, 200 area, and then I got one that does the sub stuff and almost like a whoosh. It's that push sound, And by just always using those 3, you can change the balance of maybe the click and go more metal, or you can make it more little big town. I can make kind of that dull D112 thuddy sound, real soft for country, by just keeping those same samples, but just adjusting the blend of them.
So I might have 3 of those samples on 3 of the faders in Trigger. The Slate Trigger plugin.
Yeah, I'll have 3 channels, and each one will have Slate Trigger on it, and it'll be firing off that one sample.
Oh, okay, great.
Rather than using just one plugin and putting 3 on one channel.
Sort of easier to just have each as dedicated thing.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
You'll see 4 snare channels, or sometimes 6, because I got the reel in the bottom too.
That's a good tip
and then
there.
I just lock them together. I know the blend, each one does a certain thing. I got one that has the crack, one's that's the boing, one's the meat, and 90% of them sound like crap by themselves. And I found that the only way to get them to work is to blend multiple things,
Let's talk about the snare sound that you get. So you get this powerful, and it's got just the right amount of reverb on it. Somehow the reverb sounds big, but it doesn't stick around forever and doesn't get in the way.
It's a sample. It's a room sample. So that, and I listen, and I know I go back to the Mutt Lange thing, but I've talked to somebody that worked with him back in the day, and I want to say I found out early on that his theory was by the time the snare hits, the verb needs to be done by the time it hits again.
Right.
So a lot of times you'll put a big room on and it'll last longer, and then it overlaps and does that. So I've always tried to get it to die out before the next hit, and that cleans up the mix. And sometimes even sooner than that, But
was that David Thoner, maybe? I think you worked with him.
It might have been David Thoner. It might have been Kevin Churko. And it might have even been Bob Clearmountain, because I did get a chance to speak with him on the phone one time.
I'll just have to get all those guys on the podcast.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I was a knucklehead. I was doing this, one of my first records I ever did, and I'm like, I'm just going to try calling Bob Clearmountain and asking how he did something.
Yeah.
And I literally picked up a Mix magazine, which used to be the authority on everything back in the day, you know? And he had a studio called Mix This or something up in northern, wherever he was at. And I just dialed information and got that phone number. And literally he was like, hey, this is Bob. What can I do for you? I was like, whoa. And I was like, excuse me, sir. But I asked him, and he ended up sending me his sample pack. And he's like, yeah, that Bryan Adams record. He's like, I kind of went back and forth with Mudd on the drum sound for a while, but he's like, I think I used one of his, but then like 3 of mine, and I don't have his, but I can send you my 3.
That's so great.
No way.
That's so great, man.
So,
I love hearing a story like that. It just points out, it's that bold moves like that are effective. I mean, I know it was a different time, and you could pick up the Yellow Pages.
Right.
I had a little bit of a similar story. Recently, Steve Albini was back on the show, and I met him by doing this.
I'm going to cold call him this afternoon just to see if it still works.
That's what I did. I cold called him when we needed an answer for a vocal thing. And the band was like, we really love the PJ Harvey record. And I was like, PJ who? All right, cool. I'll call Steve and find out for you. He answered the phone, and he explained how they ran it through an amp and stuff like that. And I was like,
that also brings me to another point I wanted to make. It's like everybody's like, man, you got your samples out there and you're telling all your secrets and tricks. It's like, are you afraid you're going to put yourself out of business? And when I got asked to be on this Nail the Mix show, they literally come and film, and I showed start to finish. They got screen captures, and they sit with me for 8 hours, and they film you mixing one of your songs that you've done. Well, because I am who I am, I mixed 5 just because I can't sit still for 8 hours on one song. So I'm like, I'm going to do multiple. But anyway, before I did it, I called a couple of my buddies, and I gave them a session, my templates, and said, this is exactly what I do. Try to copy me and put me out of business. See if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. And I'm telling you what, 2 of my buddies are really good mixers. Smoke my ass any day of the week. You know what I mean? I said, but do me a favor, copy me, be me. I'm going to give you everything. And he calls me back, sent me a mix. It wasn't even close. He said, you know why? He goes, 20 minutes into this thing, I started trying to do what you do. And I was like, no, I don't like that. And his ear naturally made him go over here to the left where maybe I went to the right. And he was like, another 30 minutes in, he was like, I can't even get close to you. That's not my ears. I hear a certain way, and I do a certain thing, and I literally can't copy you. It's not my thing. And what I came to find out is as long as you can't clone another person's ears, everything is always going to be different. Even if you have the exact settings, same tools, sure, you can get close, but at the end of the day, these are my favorite plugins right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm pointing to my ears, you know what I mean? And like you point to your ears, you're always going to be you. I can try to be you, but I'm just a knockoff, So.
But I mean, so just for clarity's sake, there's still, you could still use, your plugins, which model these tools. Right. They're still going to be totally useful to somebody.
Sure.
But the point is that they're going to, they're going to shortcut some of the stuff that has to happen initially to get it to the point where that person's going to make decisions with their ears and come up with their own version of, what makes sense musically.
I'll bake the cake, but you're always going to end up icing it. You know what I mean? So it's always going to look like whatever you want it to look like. But it'll taste good because I baked it.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about mixing. I guess that's what we're talking about the whole time.
Sure.
What instruments do you like to start a mix with?
Drums. Always drums. Kick drum first. Always kick drum, then snares, then hi-hat, then toms, then overheads, then rooms, and then I'll add the bass in. Then I go and add the acoustics in, then the electrics, then any ancillary instruments. Fiddle usually is always on the left for me. Steel's always on the right, 9 or 3, maybe 10 or 2, depending. Then it goes to keyboards or synths, and then I always do vocals last. Even though they're supposed to be the most important, vital part of the song, they're always last for me. So I always like to get the music bed right, and then I just drop the vocals in, and they always just, boom, sit right on the top.
Are there things that that happen when you drop that vocal in? Do you find that you have to go pull something back somewhere else? I mean, at this point, you probably know where it's supposed to be, but
yeah.
What are some of the things that we might run into as a problem if we put the vocal in last?
The track being too loud and too hot. A lot of times I'll have to bring everybody back down a couple dB by the time I get to the vocal. And it's just, I mean, the red lights are telling me we're way too hot.
Right.
So I'll just bring everybody down a couple dB, and then I'll go push back up all the returns. So like all the effect returns, I'll bring those back up too. So I bring the audio down, but then bring the master back up. Any buses go back up, effects, all that stuff. And I know it makes a difference because it's feeding into them not as hard. So it does change the sound, but usually 2 dB isn't, or 2.5. I think in medium waveform, you can go 2.5 as the default. It doesn't change it that much, you know? So, and that will give me that extra room for the vocal to pop through, and then just go to the 2 bus and crush it and turn it into a piece of duct tape, you know, in medium waveform, and then hit play and print, and you're done. Go get a cup of coffee, move on.
Rockstars, Billy's describing the look of the final mix on the screen. Looks like somebody put duct tape across your screen, right?
Duct tape. Duct tape works in audio and on that Discovery Channel show called Naked and Afraid. If you take a roll of duct tape, you can build a shelter, clothing, traps, and an audio. It gets you to the perfect loudness where you're king of the block.
That's awesome.
Or king of XM. How about that? King of XM.
King of XM. All right. How about one of the challenging instruments sometimes for me is drum overheads. What frequencies do you feel like are useful in the cymbals?
I like
stuff. When are they going to bite us in the ass?
Okay, everybody always defaults. Every time I see something, it's always like you see the SSL Waves plugins and then you hit a preset. It's like everybody jams 8K, 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 8K. And boosting it, yeah. I should clarify that. I found I like it to go a little higher. So I take it up in the 9, almost just right below 10, you know, because I know 10 and 100 are like the car stereo treble and bass. So you got to be careful of those. But I usually always high pass at about 300 on overheads, and then I boost almost 9 dB of that 9K. You know, I really like sizzly hype. I love hypey, larger than life sounds. You know, I had a friend in town and we went down to Lower Broadway, and you know, all the bands, every single bar has a band. There's a glass wall. Nobody's got a mic'd up PA. They're just blanging into the drums. Real drums just sound like ass to me. You know what I mean? Until you mic it up and start squeezing, EQ and compressing. I just cannot stand the sound of real drums or just that raw. It's like, ugh, nasty. So I love hypey, larger than life, almost fake sounding drums. You know what I mean? Where it's like, to me, getting a great drum sound in the studio is people go into a recording studio, the door closes and they come out a month later and it's like, we don't know how you did that, but it's like larger than life, like fairy dust was sprinkled on it. It's magic. It's behind the curtain of Oz, you know, Wizard of Oz. That's what I gravitate towards. I love that larger than life sound where you just go, how in the world do they do that? That's not real. That's unbelievable. It
makes drums that make your stereo sound great. That's what I like.
I love that.
I love drums and mixes that make my, you're going to shoot me down for it, but that make my iPhone speaker sound great, that make my Bluetooth speaker sound great, that make my car stereo sound great, and probably make the studio speakers sound great too.
Yes, that's why I really enjoy real drums, why I like mixing country and mixing metal and hard rock, because the real drums just live in that area. Hip hop stuff, R&B with the fake program stuff, it just bores me to tears. I do it. I get called all the time, but it's almost like you just push the fader up. It's pre-EQ'd, pre-compressed. It's huge waveforms. It's just
the program drums.
It's just done, you know? So
you're just adding the vocals on top and the effects and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's why I like to do that. But another thing I also like to do is like I said, like those SSL plugins by Waves, they have the presets, you know? On a traditional SSL, you could, or maybe not SSL, like an API, for instance, they're detinted, you know? So you can only do like 100 or 240 or 5K or 7. Now on the new ones, you can shift in between those.
Right, yeah.
So I purposely go like, if I'm boosting 7K, I'll do 700 or 7,010. So I'm just not sitting on the D10. So it sounds slightly different or slightly below. I purposely will do that so it sounds different.
Yeah.
If that works or not, I don't know. But it's been fun trying to like, I'm going to skirt the system a little bit so it doesn't sound like everything else out there. I'm like shifting that,
Well, hey, when you're mixing all the number ones and then everybody's like, I want that sound. And you're like, well, I know how to get it.
Yeah. Stay off the D10s.
All right. How about kick drum and reverb? How often is reverb useful on a kick drum?
Only for an effect. Other than that, I run the only thing on drums that I will put verb on is sometimes the overheads. If I've got a real tight room and it needs to be a little bigger, I'll actually put true verb. And I got that from a guy named Brian Hood. And
Oh yeah, Brian's great.
Brian's great. And usually you would bust it out, put it on an aux in, but he's like, no, just literally put it on the track and take off the direct button or whatever, or keep the direct on and it blends this in and it widens out your thing. And I'm like, that's brilliant, So I'll do that, but usually I won't put verb on drums unless it's an effect, and especially a kick drum. A lot of my samples have room and verb built in, and if I tighten them up within trigger, it'll eliminate that. Or if I need to open up and go, boom, they're built in. So
Right,
I'll just automate that to open and trigger.
So you don't have to waste a bunch of time looking around through reverb patches and trying to understand how to dial in all these settings.
And I use the same things I've been using since like forever. So my vocal delays is Echo Farm, and it's the Memory Man, and it's just tempo tapped in. I use that. I use one delay on all the instruments. If I need to send it to it, it goes to that. It's the same delay. I got one set up for vocals. It's the same. It chases the tempo. Usually quarter notes, I think, is what it does, So, and a verb, I think I use the Renaissance reverb. That's it. I use the vocal plate. I've used that forever. 2.95. It just lives there. And I just either bring it up or down. If you want it wetter, I'll turn it up. If you want it quieter, I'll bring it down.
How about slap? Is slap echo a useful thing?
To me, it's more of an effect. Like, who's that girl? Like a Miranda Lambert or Casey Musgraves use it, kind of, or Little Big Town did it, like the pontoon vocal sound or whatever. To me, that's a certain thing that if somebody asks for it, I'll do that. To me, it's always been like a retro effect. It takes me back to the surf guitars in the 50s.
Yeah, like if we're trying to sound like Elvis or something, then we got that. But it's not like it's a super useful thing to have a very short slap that's sort of disguised and tucked in there somehow.
There's a metal producer named Kane Shurko that I remember watching one of his nail the mixes, and he was like, he loved to put it on there because it, like on a guitar, he would put a very small delay on a guitar. And it almost just thickened it up, But since he's better than me, I don't do that. So I just let him do that, and I just do what I do.
All right, let's see. You mentioned toms before. Cassidy Pope, Summer. That track starts with a great big old tom fill, and I wondered if you wanted to talk about some of the mixing mistakes that the rest of us make, trying to get toms to sound good in our drum mixes.
That actually is a blend of 3 samples and a room sample. So I guess 3 samples. One is a real tight slappy thing I got from a metal engineer named A.L. Levy, and it's called Tom 80. I don't know if he sells that or not. Another one is, I think I used some Slate stuff. And then I always blend. So in trigger, you can do 100% fake or 0 is real. And I usually go about 60%. So you're getting the real toms that they recorded in, and then you're just getting the slap attack of mine. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I'll go in and clean those so they're tight so you don't hear the pss, pss, pss of like cymbals cutting out or getting clipped or something. But yeah, it's always a blend. So it's fake and real.
What about the low end, if the toms are like that? Is that usually, are we able to get that from just a well-recorded tom, or might we lean on a trigger for something like that?
That would be something that long. Yeah. that would be fake.
Okay. Right.
And I can send it to you if you want it. I've got a couple.
Well, it's just cool to gain some perspective because sometimes, when you don't know these things, you beat yourself up over trying to get something to sound good until one day it's like, you weren't supposed to go left at Albuquerque, not right. You know?
No, most of those effect type things are, I've got this one called Tom 35. I don't even know where I got it. Somebody sent it to me one time or something years ago. And all it is, it sounds like, oh God, I don't even know what it sounds like. It's almost like it's just a, and a lot of times I'll put that on a tom and blend it up, and it's got this subsonic thing that just kind of goes almost like an 808 sound under it, but it's got this like a bomb going off or something. And that blended with a rill gives you that, you know what I mean? So I guarantee that's what it is because I use that all the time.
Yeah.
And then I've got a set of swell cymbals from a pop thing I did back in 2001 that I use on just about everything. It's a fantastic mallet swell. And the dude sent me 5 of them, and number 2 is the best one. So I always just import that track, clip it, drag it up top. That's in almost everything I do.
That's great. That's great.
I am the chorus. That's my I am the chorus sound, Yep. I use it all the time. And then you can cut it in half and use just the back half and then verify it. And it goes, you can do the slow down record thing or whatnot if you want to do it. So that works good.
Yeah, that's a good one. I did a version of that pretty recently.
And I used to have, back in the 80s and 90s, the reverse reverb, all that stuff. Used to have to flip tape over and record it and then flip it back. Now I've got samples that do that are just reverse samples. So I'll just drag those
leading into the snare or something.
Yeah.
Come on.
Exactly. Yep.
Mutt. What would he think?
Yep. What would Mutt do? WWMD. How about that?
All right. So what about the loudness of your mixes? So should we deliver loud mixes to mastering or use like one for clients and another one that we give to the mastering engineer on a project?
Yes. Answered your questions, yes. I always, I used to just do a mix, and then I would just get it where I felt good. And it was always a little too limited when I would send it to the mastering houses, and they'd always be like, hey, we can't do anything. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of did that on purpose so you don't mess it up, Not that I think I'm great, but I just spent 45 minutes of my life making a masterpiece here. Don't ruin it in like the hour you're going to take to master it.
I can't get that 45 minutes back.
Exactly. So now what I've done is I'll deliver 2, and I've got enough mastering friends that I've hung out with that have let me hang on sessions and invited me over and let me peek behind their curtain. So I learned kind of how to master. I'm definitely not a mastering engineer, don't profess to, but I can get the equivalent, and I've started doing that to offer my clients even a little more value. So if they can't afford to go to mastering, I include a 16-bit they can upload to Spotify, and it's definitely as loud, as big and as wide as everybody, It's
the Landerator.
Yeah, it's my version of that. But I always do a TV mix, which is a mix minus the lead vocal. So it's like a karaoke track. Everybody asks for that so they can sing in the shower or the car, whatever they want to do. And then purely an instrumental. And then if they want stems, I'll have my buddy I barter with. He'll come in and bounce those down. But I always give them a high-res master, which has the looser limiting on it. So you can send that to the mastering house. There's plenty of headroom for everybody. So I'll just mix basically with all my stuff on, and then I'll just loosen up the limiter at the very end and give them an extra dB or 2 of headroom. Okay,
cool. And so you don't have to do crazy fancy routing and so that everything prints all at once. You just do 2 passes.
Yeah. And then the mastering thing, all I do is bear down on everything a little harder and put a couple clippers in and whatnot, and just get that duct tape looking thing so it's loud.
Yeah.
We did have an interesting, funny you asked this. We had a client that wanted the loudest thing he's ever done. And then when he went and put it on Spotify, they now auto level, you know what I mean? And it was adversely affecting it. So we actually rebounced. I think I was told most masters come in about -6 that's, yeah, okay. His was -4. I mean, this thing was hugely loud. And I was told Spotify, iTunes, they love -7, -8. That's where they play real nicely without really cranking the auto leveling and starting to mess with your stuff. So we went back and took that -4 and did a streaming only mix down to that -7. So when it hits the radio or the hard CD, it's still that -4, it's still loud and stuff. But streaming only, it's that -7. And it literally, it was getting pushed down.
Right.
So his loud mix was getting crushed and it was adversely affecting it and artifacts and stuff. So we put that in, and now by lowering it, it's actually louder than it was when we did it. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you, are you familiar with the loudness penalty plugin from Ian Shepherd yet?
I think that's what this thing got ran through and was told that stuff's going to happen. So they took liberties before delivering this thing to Spotify and lowered it on their own terms, anticipating that. And then when it got there, it got hit again. So his went from the loudest to the quietest on iTunes, and he was freaking out. And then so we did the -7 and it solved everything. But I think they used that plugin to say, oh, we're going to have trouble. And they took it on that. And I'm like, don't ever do that again. Just call me. I mean, it was crazy. The hoop jumping, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a fun 3 days getting yelled at, you know?
Well, yeah. It's not fun to get yelled at. No. Definitely not.
But I fixed it. We fixed it. And it's all good now. Everybody's happy.
This show is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your home studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you are ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. These techniques would work for you in whichever DAW you are using right now. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads to mix in your own studio and even include in your mixing portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now and look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. Right on, man. Well, let's jump to our closing questions here. These are sort of our jam session quick questions.
Okay.
You can give it quick answers if you want. When you started out in recording, what was holding you back? The criminal justice system?
The lack of not mentoring underneath like a famous engineer. So I basically am 100% self-taught. I did work out at that studio in California, and I got to watch some guys, but mostly I did not get taught about compression. I knew how to EQ. I'd like to think I got a pretty decent set of ears on myself. So I figured stuff out on my own, but I would have loved if somebody would have shown me compression early on.
Yeah.
When I learned about that, it's like a light bulb came on how to use it to not only level, but as an effect on making a snare drum kind of go rather than crack. You know what I mean? And
is parallel compression a thing for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you remember when you learned that?
6 years ago.
Nice.
So I literally came up doing all this stuff, getting lucky enough to mix number ones, had no idea what I was doing.
Fascinating.
And then finally I started, asking questions of, I got enough success and notoriety that I could ask that question and these people would pick up the phone. I'm not just some Yahoo calling from Nashville.
Yeah.
And I do credit a lot of my parallel success to a guy named Kevin Churko, who worked underneath Mutt Lange and is now probably one of the best metal mixing producers out there. He does Five Finger Death Punch, In This Moment, Papa Roach, and his son's great too. He's taught his son everything. Nice. And I've been lucky enough to be able to ask people like that questions and have them give me answers, So it's been really fun. And also realizing what I was doing on my own was okay back then and was the right way to do it, but just not having somebody
Just
like
a few more.
Chris Wardowski go, oh yeah, that's cool. That's right. Yeah, you're doing that right. That's what I do too. And I'm like, oh, and I tell that story. He actually came in and surprised me at Soundstage. I was in mixing, and the studio manager is a good friend of mine, and Chris Wardowski was speaking at Blackbird or something. This was probably 7-8 years ago. And he comes over, and the studio manager is like, Chris, before you leave, he's like, do me a favor. There's this guy up front named Billy Decker. All he talks about is Chris or this. Chris, I'm going to throw up unless you go in and just make an appearance, all right? You'll make his day and shut him up so he can say he met you. So I'm sitting there mixing, and literally I hear, hey! And I turn around, and Chris Wardowski's standing right there behind my back. And all I did was get up, and I gave him a hug. I didn't say a word.
That's great.
Then he's like, hey, I hear you're trying to be me. He's like, I can't stop you, but I can sure as hell make sure you're doing the right stuff. He's like, snap up a session. Let me see what you're doing. And he literally took about 45 minutes and went through every channel and go, what are you doing? That's right. Oh, that's cool. Why are you doing it? He's like, don't ever do that again. That's stupid. That's terrible. Don't do that. Oh, I do that too. And by the end of that, there was so much validation just having somebody like that go, what you did was right, or that's wrong. But I learned more that day than I've learned in probably 20 years of my career.
Wow, man. What a cool story.
Yeah. And having something like that happen, that flipped a light bulb on, and it gave me the confidence to go, oh, you know what? Chris Wardowski said what I've been doing that I thought was stupid was cool all these years. So there really is no right or wrong. I can put that EQ before a compressor, and that's okay. You know? So
that's fascinating.
Yeah,
man,
it was a light bulb moment. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess that would answer the question of some of the best advice you received was having Chris just come into the control room and tell you what's up.
That was neat. Another piece of advice I got, and I actually got this from my dad. I always refer back to him just because I'd like to think I was raised by a very smart man, hardworking guy. Always treat everybody like you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And remember that this is their project. It's not yours. So your job is to make them realize their goal or their song. You know what I mean? All you are is a hired gun. Do your job, be the best you can at it, give everybody the same treatment, and be honest. Don't rip anybody off. Say what you're going to do, and then do exactly what you say, and then some. And you'll be a success in life.
What did your dad do for work?
He was a small town pharmacist, and he was the guy that would get called at 2 a.m. to go fill a prescription because there was a crying baby with an earache. And I'd hear him walking down the hall, and he's like, hey, you want to ride with me to the pharmacy? I got to fill a prescription. So I got very fond memories of middle of the night visits to a small town of 12,000 people, But he always, and then he would deliver it to their house, and then he would come home, go to bed, and get up and be at work at 8 a.m, So I learned a pretty good work ethic and how to treat people. Now, obviously I screw up all the time, and I get all these people like, oh yeah, Decker's so cool. And you'll hear my wife say, well, you don't live with him. You know what I mean? So don't talk to my wife about that. She'll disagree with you there. But as many mistakes as I've made, I always just try to, at the end of the day, do the right thing and just be the nicest guy you can be.
I think that's so helpful when you're making records with people. I remember initially feeling like I wanted to prove myself a lot, and that caused me to want to put my stamp of what I liked on things, and it would just get in the way. And a thing that I find really helpful is to put myself in more shoes through the record making process. So go out there and play an instrument and be on the headphones and see what it's like and go like, well, shit, no wonder they want to hear so much more acoustic guitar in the headphones because this sounds terrible if I don't hear a lot of it or whatever,
Absolutely.
So that's great. Or like, having somebody else mix and working with them in that capacity and then realizing just how hard it is as somebody with on the artistic side to even communicate whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. That's hard to do sometimes,
I've gotten so much work from people that have been unhappy, and maybe not even the sound that they got, but it was just painful. And somebody was a jerk. Somebody didn't call them back. I was told, I got this from Scott Hendricks, never let a phone call go past the end of the day. Return all your phone calls by the end of the day, and you'll just get a gig by default for being the first guy that calls back, And I've tried to do that too. So I never let a phone call wait overnight. Sometimes I'll let an email linger till the next day, but I always try to get back to everybody. And I mean, just seriously, put yourself in their shoes. If you were wanting somebody to mix and you've got the balls enough to call me up and say, hey, I'd really love to, I love what you do. Will you mix my record? Well, how would I feel if somebody didn't respond? I just paid them a compliment,
right,
and want to pay them money, and you don't even call them back. I mean, that makes no sense to me. That's bad business,
Yeah.
So common sense, I guess,
Well, no, I know for some people, sometimes if you get busy, it can feel like a struggle to figure out how to keep up with that, even if you want to. Have you found that there are useful times during the day where you're able to return the phone calls more easily or check the emails and return those? That's
why I like to bounce in real time and not do that speed bounce, because that gives me 3 minutes to get up, return a phone call, return an email. I am 100% in the box as well. So one of the things that everybody that works with me knows is, because all I do is mix, you're never going to have to wait more than probably 24 or 36 hours for me to start your project, because I can start and stop and do multiple. And I work so efficiently and fast that you'll never wait, So you're not going to miss a deadline. You're not going to miss an album release or a pitch. But also, and this is, I don't know if it's unheard of, but I have always offered 100% free recalls. And I know a lot of people charge for those, But by me doing that, it gives you confidence to know, I don't need to send Decker a whole page of notes. I mean, 2 weeks from now, if something's still bothering me, he'll stop, snap it up what he's doing, instantly bounce me down a mix and have it to me. So by me offering that, 90% of the time, it never gets taken advantage of. And people are like, oh yeah, it gives them this thing. It's like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, one or two. If something's bothering me 2 years down the road, we'll snap it back up, And obviously they never do. Now, in saying that, there are times once or twice a year, I'll get that client where I've recalled a song 14 times. You know what I mean? Oh, put the hi-hat up a half dB. Oh, nope, wrong. Move it over to the left. 0.2. What? I'm like, really? Come on. But at the end of the day, it's their record, and I just bite my tongue and go home and punch through the drywall, drop kick the dog, But it really usually works in my favor.
I find recall notes sometimes are fantastic when people just say like a little more of this, a little less of that. It's so fast to just go through and do that. It's a lot harder when it's like, it just doesn't feel right. Then I'm like, all right, I got to rethink this.
And another good thing is I actually spent 7 years as a staff songwriter with 2 publishing companies in town and got paid a salary. I was a full-time writer as well as doing this. And every songwriter out there and artists, they're crazy. They're batshit crazy. Everybody is. That's the nature of our business. Engineers are crazy in their own way. You know what I mean? But by being on that side of the fence for a little bit, I can actually understand when a writer or artist comes in and goes, you know what? These hi-hats sound yellow. They need to sound more gray. I'm like, okay, it's sunny, bright. Bright. There we go. Okay, gray color. Everybody loves colors,
Yeah.
The only time I get in trouble is when somebody comes in and goes, this song sounds green. It needs to sound more magenta. And I'm like, okay, I know gray means dull. Blue is sad. Yellow, sunny, whatever, happy. Magenta, I still haven't figured out what the hell that means on an EQ yet.
That means it's got its own YouTube vlog.
I guess. I have no idea on that.
All right, cool. So, any favorite hardware tools or something you're excited about using in the studio that you like on every mix? I'd like to have a mouse that works.
Yeah. Hardware tools.
Or anything physical in the studio that you just find yourself using every day.
No, I don't think so. I got some really cool tubes from Wathen Audio, and Don Wathen made me a set of custom speakers for the studio that I love listening to. I'm trying to think of anything other than that, though. I'm super bare bones. I hardly get anything new. I've been using the same plugins forever, I would say no.
All right.
Which is funny because being self-employed, everybody's like, oh, you got all these write-offs and stuff. You could buy gear. It's like, I don't buy gear. So I get 0 write-offs, and if I do buy a plug-in, it's like a $29 one or something once every 3 years. So, I wish I could say that, but no.
All right, take it. Well, let's jump to software, though.
Okay.
Tell us if there's any other software you want to tell us about, but also remind us where we can go pick up all your stuff.
Oh, yeah. You can just go to Joey Sturgis Tones and download them. You got to have an iLock and stuff, but he usually runs sales. So if you see him on sale, grab them. They sound the same. It doesn't matter. If you want to pay me a little more, go ahead and buy them full price.
Well, it's still a great deal. I mean, I don't remember what the price was, a couple $100 or something like that. But I mean, you're talking about what I saw, the Bus Glue series. You're talking about a plug-in that you can put on every element of your mix and literally be mixing your song a lot faster.
The thing that was cool is he goes, if we're going to do this, and I even said, it's like, I can't stand when you get this signature series from Joe Blow and he's like got all these presets, but then it's not what he uses every day. It's like, you can obviously see he came in and just made a bunch of stupid stuff and he's pimping it out with his name. I said, if we do this, I said, love me or hate me, I'm going to do my exact thing. I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom. If you want them, you probably don't want Billy Decker's keys to the kingdom because it's not a very big kingdom.
And there's no deductions in this kingdom.
No, there's no deductions. But what it does is in my vocal chain, it took 5 plugins, it put it in one, and it cuts the delay compensation like by 2/3.
Right.
So in essence, I guess your computer runs more efficient, you know? And I have started using these myself because the emulations they came up with in some instances sound better than what I was doing. So it actually beat on like 2 or 3 of these plugins. I was like, I mean, they're all equal, you know what I mean?
Right.
But on 2 or 3, I'm like, holy smokes, we actually made it better.
That's pretty cool.
Instead of just mimicking, we made it better, So because they use that Argentinian dude has some brilliant algorithm or something, and he saw what I was doing and said, okay, Decker's doing a FET compressor 4-to-1, super slow, super fast. Well, I'm going to hot rod it with this, put his version of it in, and that blended with something else, and it came out really cool,
That's
so
super
it's
cool.
kind of fun.
So now, one more time, how would we use your plugins? We would put them, like if we had the drums would go bust together through this plugin, and
yes,
bass would go through
on the
it.
drums, you would use it. You could put it on just a snare drum, if you want a dynamic. These are all EQ and dynamic done, no effects. You can put those on your own verb, your own delays.
Right.
But this would be drums. It works really good if you put it on the parallel squash channel or whatever you decide to crush. Put it on that. The bass, put it directly on the bass guitar. The acoustics, put it directly on the acoustic guitar. The electrics, especially, put it right on the electrics. It's done. You turn up one knob and it's ready to go.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to build any effects for us too?
Probably not. I got nothing to model. I only use 2 and they're already available. So it's like, I don't use anything other than that Echo Farm and that
was the verb.
It was the waves, something Renaissance
verb. Yeah.
No, Joey and I are doing another one right now. It's about halfway done, and it's going to be a really cool thing. It's going to be a very in demand. That's going to be I don't want to say game. Everybody says game changer, but it will be.
Describe our mood after we use your new plugin when it's finished.
Magenta.
We'll have a magenta mood. I love it. There you go. You got to solve the pain points where they exist.
Exactly.
Now, how about a tip or a resource for the business side of doing this? If the rock stars want to make music for more than just a hobby and they want to make it for a living, what advice do you have?
Pay your quarterly taxes. Try not to get behind. because you'll get yourself in a big hole, and no financial holes fun to climb out of. Also, remember that every year, usually in January, February, and sometimes in the summer, people go on vacation. They don't record. The business comes to a slowdown. It doesn't mean you suck. Every year, I have 1 or 2 weeks where the phone stops ringing, and I'm like, the dream is dead. It's done. I'm moving to Florida. I'm going to dig palm tree holes for the rest of my life.
That's not when you book vacations?
Yes. Everybody hates me. I couldn't get arrested in the recording world. And sure enough, once you go outside, get yourself a hobby. For me, it's woodworking. Mow the grass, cut a tree down, do whatever. All of a sudden, you come inside, there's a message. Hey, can you mix a song? Then it slowly starts going. So do not worry about the ups and downs in the music business. Like I said, if you're honest, you do a good job and say what you're going to do what you're going to say, and you got a decent pair of ears on you, you'll get a phone call.
Yeah.
You'll get a phone call.
Yeah. Consistency and persistency are two valuable skills, I guess.
And probably the biggest thing would be stay off social media with your opinions. Okay. I literally have liberal clients that are calling me to mix. I know for a fact if I have Fox News on, they will kick me in the teeth, right? So when I have a liberal client, I'm going to put on MSNBC when they come walking in. If I have a conservative client, vice versa, I'll put on Fox News. If I don't know what you are, I'll put on the tennis channel and we'll all be friends. You know what I mean? So social media, do not alienate 50% of your clientele. Don't get on social media and say, oh, I like this candidate or this kid. Don't talk politics, sex, or religion on social media. It will kill your music business. Yeah. Trust me. Yeah. I've got so many friends that get on there and vent whenever elections come or some big issue goes. It's like, dude, nobody cares. You don't like when rock stars start venting all over the place and spewing there. Leave that for the pundits and the View in the morning, all that stuff. Let them argue about that. Do not do anything that damages your business. I see it all the time. And the first thing I do, I've spoken at a couple conferences and I'm like, do not argue on social media. You will kill your business.
Yeah.
It's just, it's foolish, for me to think that I would say something and all of a sudden somebody that was going to book a record with me, he's like, nope, I ain't going over there. Dude voted for this dude for president.
Guy's an asshole.
Yeah. Why would you kill your career? You're a service-oriented business.
Yeah.
I am the McDonald's of mixing. That's what I told my friend Jeff Giuliano, and he cracks him up every time I say that. I keep the quality high. I don't know the McRibs are pretty damn good, so I'm going to say good quality. But I am all about value, service. You come up, you drive through, you order a hamburger. The only difference between me and that gal at the drive-through window is instead of saying, you want pickles and onions on your burger, I say you want reverb and delay on your mix.
Yep.
That's the only difference. Do your job, stay a nice guy, be happy, keep your opinions to yourself. You'll be a success.
Dig it, man. That's great advice. You have a lot of music coming in the door, going out the door. I guess the virtual door.
Yes.
How do you keep it all organized? How do you keep your shit together? What advice do you have for the rock stars?
I actually keep my computer offline, and I'm kind of an old school pen and paper guy. Every morning I come in, I have a sheet of paper and a black Sharpie, and I will write down what I need to do for the day. If I get a call, I'll add it to the list, and I'll check it off when it's done. I keep my computer offline so I can't get hacked, so people can't, you see every day somebody's getting their iCloud hacked and pictures are floating all over the internet. How easy would it be if I'm doing a record for, say, like this last Chris Young record, say these artists are spending 100, 150, 200 grand on a record. What happens if somebody hacks in, grabs that music off my computer and it's released a week before it's supposed to come out on Sony or BMG or wherever he's at? Who do you think's on the hook for that? Me. I'm going to have to come up with 200 grand or however much it costs. You know what I mean? So I purposely stay offline on my work computer and I just transfer back and forth to my laptop. So I'll do the work. I transfer it. I write it down. I'll write how much I charge this client to mix. I keep it in a paper folder, give it to my wife. She does all the billing. She'll put it in QuickBooks and stuff. But literally, that keeps me organized by just going back and forth on mixes and stuff. And then just by email, 90% of people communicate either by text or email with me.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. Like, communication comes in quickly. It doesn't always come in quickly when you ask for a note on a mix, but it comes in quickly when you don't ask for a note.
And I know there's programs out there that keep you oriented and scheduled and stuff, but I guess I just stay organized by the way my workflow is. I finish it, I instantly get up, copy it over my flash drive, email an MP3 for approval, write it down, put it in my folder, and go on to the next one, cross it off the list. So I guess make lists,
Well, I think the good takeaway too is do what works for you,
Yeah. I mean, if you got an app on your phone that does it, use that, just do something so you're not like just super scattered, because nobody wants, and also always make sure you spell your client's name right and the artist's name right. Do not send out an email with the wrong song title or whatnot, because that will make people so mad. Songwriters, artists, these are their babies. If I call them by the wrong name or basically slap their baby or call them ugly, they're not going to call me again, So always make sure. I actually won a shootout with another engineer on a record, because that engineer misspelled the artist's name. And the first thing he did when he called me, he goes, "You won, Decker." I said, "Wow, what'd you think?" He goes, "I don't even care." He goes, "That motherfucker misspelled my name. You won." I said, "There you go. Points
there you go.
for effort."
Attention to detail.
Yep.
I've learned that lesson by making that mistake. So
it's just, and it really is just common sense,
Yeah.
It's just, you got to think before you do something.
I'm hoping to never make that mistake again. Now, I will say, we're both 51 now, and you got your reading glasses on. I do too. I hope that was all right that I divulged that you had your reading glasses on.
I just got a new 4-pack at Sam's, so I'm ready to roll.
But I do find it's a lot harder work for me now to proof all this stuff, proofread things, and so
I bet.
That's just life,
Well, mine are only 1.5. Yours are probably 2.0. That's the problem with
I wish I could blame it on that.
Teasing.
I think I'm still like trying to do ones. That's my problem. I'm not getting strong enough.
Yeah, you got to go up a notch.
All right. So, final closing question.
Yes, sir.
We're going to take the Wayback Studio Machines hypothetical. Mm-hmm. You're going to go back and find young Billy, banging his gavel, order in the court. And I hope you don't mind me keeping talking about that. But you're going to go back and give yourself some advice. And you say, "Listen, Billy, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the recording studio yourself one day." What advice would you go back and give yourself if you could?
Ask as many questions to as many people as you possibly can, and know your craft inside and out, meaning we're recording music. Know music inside and out. If you're doing film for TV, know about the film aspect. You know what I mean? Like I said, I would have told myself to major in music, and that would have given me, I think, a leg up, maybe communicating with a musician or something. "Hey, you played the third diminished upside," like I was saying, where now I'm just like, "Oh, maybe at bar 14, can you redo that? It sounds funny," So I would just say, know as much as possible. And now it's so easy. I mean, you can get on the internet or YouTube and figure out anything, But I would say always ask questions, and don't ever think you're the best, because and stop practicing. Even now, I love going in the studio on my day off. If I have nothing to do, I seriously will go in. I'll try new samples. I'll try new blends of stuff. I'll find something that still makes me go, "I suck. This guy is awesome. Why can't I do that?" And I'll A/B back and forth and try to get as loud as him or as deep as that kick drum or whatnot, So I really love what I do. And if you love what you do, you'll be a success. The money will come. You know what I mean? Because if you love what you do, other people will see that, and it'll just radiate.
You'll do your best work.
Yeah, you'll do your best work. So I would say, yeah. And then here's the one. I gotta say this, because I got asked to. I'll leave you with this. I was speaking at this audio conference, and somebody goes, "Hey, give me 2 keys to your success." And I said, "Well, the first one would be have audio. we'll mix. Don't discriminate. Do everything. Take it all. You never know when it's going to stop or start, so just do as much as you can. It'll make you better. And the second thing, how about this? Don't be a dick.
Nice.
There you go. Don't be a dick.
Awesome. Billy, thank you so much for being on Recording Studio Rockstars with us, man. Absolute pleasure to meet you and hang out with you and hear all your great advice. How can the Rockstars find you online? How can they follow you? Go find your stuff. Learn more about you. How do they mix their next record with you?
All you got to do is just go to billydecker.com. I've got a little GoDaddy website. You can contact me there. My email is deckerrator@comcast.net. And then, hell, you can call me if you can find my cell phone. I need to be found to get mixed, so look me up. And I'm always over at Westwood. I've been there 5 years. And then you can always find me at Joey Sturgis Tones as well, So other than that, just come to Nashville and say, "Where's Decker?" And somebody will point you in my direction. You'll end up on my front porch. So
awesome, man. Well, you guys have, what was it, Athens restaurant right down the hill from you. It's like the most delicious Greek breakfast joint, whatever you need right there.
Champions right there.
So come get some food in Nashville, Rockstars. Billy, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to seeing you around the studio, man.
Talk soon.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. Also, remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with these weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com. Look for the link in the show notes. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio, all totally free. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.